Today, I find it very interesting that instead of three tenors, we have three Rotarians to be giving us giving us some very interesting insights. Our first speaker is Bob Anthony, who chairs the mental health initiatives of Rotary Action Group for Rotary International. Rotary International is instrumental in making the eradication of polio practical by its local presence in the form of Rotary clubs in 200 countries. This action group helps those clubs break stigma, which is what we want to do here, raise awareness, and increase access for early treatment and prevention of behavioral health challenges. He has facilitated implementation of behavioral health projects in the US, Puerto Rico, India, and Nigeria. He is also the executive director of Adolescent Wellness Incorporated, AWI, a 501c3 nonprofit he founded in 2005 after a 20-year career in the tech sector. AWI promotes development of practical resources to prevent mood disorders and prompt earlier treatment. Bob earned an MBA degree from DeVry University's Keller Graduate School of Management and is a certified public accountant from the University of Illinois. He moved to Naples, Florida, not Italy, from Boston in 2019 with his wife, Nancy, and they have 2 sons and 2 grandchildren. Today, Bob Anthony is delivering a speech from the Pathway Presentation Mastery, and it is the Level 1 project, Writing a Speech with Purpose. Title of the speech, How to End the Waitlist for Treatment. How to End the Waitlist for Treatment. Bob Anthony, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. I am hoping to actually learn a lot from you folks today. The presentation slides I'm bringing up right now, and I hope that everyone can see. We are in fact talking about a toolkit, a lever, and its intention is to allow time for early treatment. It's an education bundle that comes from Boston Children's Hospital. It's a set for the prescriber and the patient, as well as the parent. We all know early treatment's important. Half of all psychiatric disorders begin by age 14, but less than half receive treatment. And untreated ailments such as anxiety, ADHD, depression impacts morbidity and mortality. The doctors could treat, but each cares for 1,000 or more youth. They already screen and they flag symptoms that are developing. They feel they don't have time for lengthy discussions on these complex topics. So as a result, just 1 in 4 prescribing providers currently treat youth with anxiety, ADHD, depression, although those are the most common ailments. And it's because of time, which also interferes with training, confidence, reimbursement. So the breakthrough that Rotary clubs around the world have been asked to introduce is to allow the providers to prescribe guided self-management. These are tools appropriate to the age of the individual. So if a youth has anxiety and they're age 6 to 12, there's a toolkit in a format that they can work on their own. And the parent can also be involved if the parent's available to be involved. Separately, the similar content's provided in a format suitable for a teen, and in a third format for the parent of that teen. So in a very quick introduction, the individuals most important to getting healthy can see the path, see the goals, see the symptoms, and literally all be on the same page.
One of the most challenging things about being a parent is just finding the balance. I have 5 daughters. They're all different. What might work for one might not work for the other. It's just hard. My kids have a big trauma in their life. My child's father passed away. When she was little, a teacher told us, you know, she doesn't look at us in the eyes. She wouldn't sit still. In kindergarten, she couldn't pay attention. So we did see some things in Gianna, just like we saw in Micaela, but a lot more came out once their dad passed away. It just became even more difficult.
I had a really hard time with math. The way they explained things to me was really confusing, and I just couldn't understand anything. Reading was a struggle, and I couldn't read any of the packets or anything of the instructions. So it was really hard to read and write. My anxiety was really bad, and I had panic attacks multiple times a day, every single day. That was probably the hardest point in my life. I just felt like everything was crumbling in on me.
It's hard. It's very hard. I felt like I was drowning, but even worse, she felt like she was drowning. And I didn't know how to get her out of there. So I came to my doctor's office to ask for help. I met with Dr. Anzaloni and Dr. Tam, and then I was introduced to a toolkit.
One of the things that we focus on in our clinic is teaching basic coping skills, and one of the very helpful resources has been using the toolkits from Boston Children's Hospital. They teach small evidence-based ways to reduce anxiety, reduce depression, and manage behavior in general. And through teaching those skills, one, you can help individuals with all levels of severity, and it also keeps people from having unnecessary treatment, time, and costs.
To have it organized in a way that you can actually focus on each child's issue and have an ability to be able to manage each child personally and in a way that it's going to be meaningful for that child's issue is going to help her, because it can be overwhelming. But when we can give people the ability to organize it in a way that makes their lives easier and bless their children in a way that they can heal, empowers her.
When I read it, it just all clicked. It's kind of like, wow, I'm not the only one that's going through this. I'm not crazy. My kids aren't crazy.
And I'll move on from there. It goes on to have the youth also talk about this resource helping them directly. And that's the key point. The kids can actually work with this, know the path to wellness and get there. The material can be quite scientific as well for the providers, half of it. You can see some of the materials in the lower right there that illustrate the importance of having the ability to prescribe in addition to talk therapy. The little town I live is quite wealthy, but quite rural, Naples, Florida. So we didn't have a lack of money, but we had a lack of child psychiatry. The average delay between first symptom and first treatment in the US was averaging about 10 years. And that's for the lucky half that get treatment. So the providers here, the pediatricians here, did a before and after survey before participating in this program and after. And the key element's the third one, where 94% now intend to treat all mild and moderate symptoms. That's the breakthrough from a period when a year ago, only 41% had the confidence to proceed. And that's a more technical video geared towards the providers. So some of the logos here are from my town, Naples, Florida, and it's now the first county. Collier County is the first in the state of Florida in the USA, where the majority of pediatricians routinely treat all mild and moderate cases. It was through the magic of Rotary, which has clubs near most communities. We were invited to present with the St. Croix Rotary Club in the Harbor Side. And so some of their logos are up here because they're implementing it now as well. So the toolkit overview may be downloaded at this link, and Rotary clubs everywhere in the world are interested in helping if you're in the general community. reach out to them or reach out to me. We'd like to bring this into your town. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob Anthony, for this very important information. Actually, I do have people who would be interested in that kit. Up next, we have our second Rotarian, Steve Boyce. At Steve Boyce Partners, the aim is to train the world on how to negotiate, communicate collaboratively, and creatively, one client at a time. Steve Boyce has 30 years of experience in the corporate world and as a negotiator trainer to companies including Expedia, Nestle, Travelocity, and Procter & Gamble. So he launched his business with the hope and intention of working with clients who not only recognize the tough realities of the modern commercial environment, but also who simultaneously have a desire to work more collaboratively and creatively with their key trading partners. The approach is to first understand the unique challenges and goals and then inform and tailor a bespoke approach. So I am very intrigued, I hope the rest of you are too, by the title of Steve Boyce's speech, which is Why Sometimes Taking Your Time is Key to Negotiating Your Desired Outcome.
Thank you. And just before I start, I will say that I did use a Toastmasters story outline, one pager, to kind of put this little presentation together. So thank you, Toastmasters. Why sometimes taking your time is key to negotiating your desired outcome. Okay, it's January 2024. I've been invited to a meeting room on the 56th floor of the Empire State Building, New York. I've been asked to talk about what bipolar is and to talk about the launch of the new Rotary Bipolar Club. I have all the best equipment. I have great slides. I've got great equipment to play my video. I have acoustics in the room that carries my voice back easily and effortlessly to the 70 people in the room. Everyone in that room has chosen to be there. I introduce myself. I disclose I have lived experience of bipolar. I then present for 20 minutes and everything goes well. Once I've finished, I move on to the Q&A. First couple of questions, really nice, just wanting to understand the condition and the club. And yeah, that was all really positive. Then something happened. A member of the audience had clearly not been impressed by my presentation. They start to share their own story of how they overcome their own mental health crisis without any support, because they had the right character, the right DNA, and they had the personal strength to come through it all by themselves. They then encouraged a couple of people, a couple of their friends, to share similar stories. The implication, I'm sure many people in this room will already get the implication, if you were in my shoes, is that they were the kind of person who has made a better stuff, more resilient than those who have a mental health condition that requires extra support. Here was stigma laid bare. So I'm going to ask a question of everyone who's listening into this chat. I'm going to ask you to put something into the chat box. So put yourself in my shoes. You're new into the Rotary Bipolar Club. You're in a foreign country. You witness this behavior. You feel all these things internally. What do you do next? And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to a minute. Just, by the way, there's no wrong answers, but just for play, what would you do if you were in my situation in that meeting? I like the one breathe. Okay, grand reveal. This is what I did. I did nothing. Absolutely nothing. In the moment. I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the tools. How could I engage with this individual in a way that made sense for me, made sense for him, would carry the rest of the room with me, best represent Rotary, best represent the bipolar community. I had none of those skills. In the moment, and that's the key word, I did nothing. What I did do is I went and spoke to my colleagues at Bipolar UK, which is the biggest charity for bipolar in Great Britain. I spoke to my colleagues at Rotary around their values and behaviours expected by all Rotarians. And what happened is over the preceding next 2 to 3 weeks, we developed together brand new content to proactively encourage better behaviours from public audiences, both Rotarians and non-Rotarians, for the future. I took my time. Engaging in a debate there and then would have gone almost certainly badly and made it difficult for me to act next. By taking my time to build support from a broader team, we now have new content that will help the general public better understand a complex condition and hopefully be more compassionate to the bipolar community in general. So in conclusion, sometimes doing nothing in the moment is not weak. Sometimes it gives you breathing space. It allows you to calm your emotions, and then it can help you build a solution with others, which is both great for you and for the community you represent. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that. You will be happy to know that here in Toastmasters, we do have one module which approaches precisely this kind of situation. Right, moving on. Our third Rotarian is Roger Stent. Spent 25 years in production management of a heavy industry, steel, brick making, chemicals, water supply, waste management, plus had a career in professional management training. Loves meeting new people and helping people learn, travels to over 50 countries, and even now, though theoretically retired, is still active. In 2023, started new contracts in Ukraine and Estonia, and is coaching senior directors of 2 major charities, helping people with learning impairments and communication difficulties. Joined Rotary in 1999 and was president in 2017 and 18, holding different service positions in his club. So our speech right now, Roger Stent's speech, the title is How to Set Up a Cause-Based Club in 5 Easy Steps. And I'm sure very many of us will be most intrigued by these suggestions. Please, Mr. Roger Stent, stage is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me tonight to talk about how we are creating new types of Rotary clubs. In particular, my district has pioneered the establishment of cause-based clubs here in the UK. And we've developed a 5-stage process for setting them up. So this is what we're going to cover. Where is District 1145? The number means nothing. What is a cause-based club? That helps. And what are the 5 steps? So, firstly, this is Rotary in Great Britain and Ireland. My district is there. It's down in Surrey, Sussex and South London. For those of you who fly here often, it covers Gatwick and Heathrow, plus some wonderful countryside. We have about 90 clubs and about 2,100 members. And like many organisations, we've seen membership tottering in the last few years. And we wanted to do something different that would re-energise and attract people. I joined Rotary when I was 48. How many 48-year-olds have we got? Not many. So we've got to do something. And that's why we thought, let's see what is around. And the concept of cause-based clubs was described to us. Now, cause-based clubs were formally derived by Tom Gump from Edina in Minnesota. He's now quite high up. He's the aide to the Rotary International president for next year, Stephanie Urchick. And when he was District 5950, which is in Edina, for those of you who know Minnesota, he was concerned about keeping the members that we had attracted. So we're all getting them, but you've got to keep them. And a survey had found that roughly, if you got them after 3 years, you've got them. How can you stop the drain in those first 3 years? And he thought, we got to give them a passion, a cause. And in 2019, he set up a club aimed at recruiting US Armed Forces vets, the veterans, who were aimed at helping provide services to other vets in need. And it blossomed. It's now about 60 members. And he's since set up 2 more that are eco clubs, looking at environmental projects. So, how did he define a cause-based club? And basically, he said a cause-based club is a Rotary club, in our case, whose members are firstly passionate about a particular cause. Secondly, they focus their service efforts in that area. They try not to get diverted. And thirdly, it is geared to attract members who want to connect with others whilst addressing a particular set of problems. So that was his definition, and it's quite a good one. It gives you a focus on who to go for. Now, what are the 5 steps? Well, very briefly, I'm just going to read these, then we'll go into them. 1, find a cause. We happen to have chosen bipolar. I'll explain that later. 2, find a partner, because you've got to access that community. 3, create a platform. How are you going to meet? What is the nature of it? 4, start talking to people. It's all very well having theory, but make it happen. Go out there and sell it. And then 5, and the one that gets missed, follow up and support them after it's happened. Don't just walk away. So let me take you through the story of how we set up the Bipolar E-Club. We wanted to find a cause. Now, in my first year as district governor in 21-22, I met Professor Judith Pratt of Strathclyde University in Glasgow. She is a world-renowned expert in systems neuroscience, co-director of the Psychiatric Research Institute of Neuroscience in Glasgow, and leads research in the identification and development of drugs to treat psychiatric diseases. But she also happened to be president-elect of her Rotary Club in Sussex, which was in my district. And I got talking to her when I did my club visit. And through her, I became aware of the growing links between Rotary Great Britain and Ireland and Bipolar UK, the cause-based charity. Now, Rotary Great Britain and Bipolar signed a partnership in late 2022. And our joint presence with Bipolar was significant at the launch of their Bipolar Commission at the Houses of Parliament in March 2023. And that's about when I got involved. It was then that things started to happen quickly. I had a very close personal or family connection to someone living with bipolar. And after learning from RI Vice President Nikki Scott, lady in the light purple dress, second from the right, that they were thinking of setting up a cause-based club to promote bipolar, I immediately volunteered my district and said, we'll do it. So bipolar became our cause. Now we had to cement the partnership, because it's all very well saying we will work with them, but they might not work to. So we started to talk to them. The first thing I did was to speak to a lady called Dr. Cheryl Berry. Now, I'm sorry it's an Alamy stock photo. I couldn't get one without the branding on it. But this is her receiving her member of the British Empire from the then Prince of Wales, who is now our king. So she was fairly well connected and had a big reputation. She was heading up Rotary Great Britain and Ireland's humanitarian services team and had led the development of the signing of the partnership with Bipolar UK. Through her, I was introduced to their team, in particular to their chief exec, Simon Kitchen, and to their strategic partnership manager, Lorna Morgan Glanfield. They welcomed the idea of a cause-based Rotary Club with open arms. And Simon even volunteered not only to become a member, but also the charter president. Now that shows the commitment we got from them. Without that, it wouldn't have happened. So then we thought, we've got to find a platform. And the one thing we thought of, this is an international club. It has worldwide potential. It is not, the condition is not restricted to the United Kingdom and Ireland. So any platform on which the club would operate had to be available widely and be easy to operate to have international reach. And that meant an online channel, and we chose Zoom. A few trial meetings sorted out teething issues, and then we were ready. So the next challenge was, who's going to use it? We need members. We need to start talking to people. And that's where we moved on to. So the joy of having an enthusiastic partner such as Bipolar UK was that they could promote the club to their supporters. And you've just heard from one, Steve Boyce. He was a member of Bipolar UK, but there was no way he was going to join a standard Rotary club. But he was going to be interested in a cause-based club. So within a few weeks, we had enough people interested to run some information Q&A evenings. And through these, to move them from interest to intent. The group developed a common purpose. People stepped up to take on officer roles. And that meant we needed to move on making the club formally part of Rotary. What I hadn't realised was how committed the then incoming RI President Gordon McAnally had been to promote mental health, and through his own personal experience, bipolar in particular. He had been working closely with Bipolar for several years, including being on their stand at our Action Summit or Institute in Birmingham in 2022. I was introduced to Gordon at our convention in Melbourne last year and cheekily asked him if he'd like to present the charter to the new club. Not only did he say yes, but he insisted that he would make room for it in his diary. It took a few weeks to find a suitable time slot, but on the 1st of July, the Rotary E-Club of Bipolar was chartered, and a few days later, Gordon formally welcomed the club into the family of Rotary. Job done? No. You've got to follow up. And what we found was that a significant feature of our new club was that every charter member was new to Rotary. There were no transferees from other clubs. Brilliant. All new members. We've increased our membership. But, stating the obvious, none of them had been in Rotary before. So they might be interested in the cause, but they didn't know how Rotary worked. And that meant we had to pass on a lot of information. So in the first few months, Judith, Cheryl and I made sure one of us was at each of the new club's meetings to help them build confidence. And we also gave them a lot of support through our district offices. 9 months on, we have moved much more into a coaching role rather than having to be their mentors and tutors. Now, the E-Club, although with international membership, has a president who lives in the northeast of England and a treasurer who lives in Liverpool. But it does continue to be hosted by us, so their members are members of our district. They add to our numbers, helps us on. We've introduced them to our structure and to the main support officers, have given them an assistant district governor as support, and since then the club has flourished with some impressive speakers joining their meetings, including, would you believe, a 4-star US Army general, and they've started to develop big projects such as the pole-to-pole walk in support of Bipolar Day, where they've raised thousands of pounds with the help of Rotary going out, walking, sponsored. And more importantly, they have significantly raised their public profile through press and media. And the big one, they've doubled in membership in the last year, since last July. We are proud of them. We are proud of what they've achieved so far, and we're proud of what they will become. The first international cause-based club. So, just a quick reminder of the 5 steps to heaven. Find a cause, find a partner, create a platform, start talking to people, follow up and support them. So I'm delighted to have had the chance to leave you with that happy thought. And thank you very much for listening. I will be happy to try to answer any of your questions when the opportunity arises. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this introduction. Personally, it is a great honor for me to be Toastmaster of the Day here with this special occasion, because the whole reason I joined Toastmasters was to be starting cause-based Toastmasters clubs. Touch very much on similar aspects to the ones touched on today. Right now, we are opening the floor for questions and answers. So please, if anyone has a question for one of our 3 Rotarians, please raise your hand and you will be called upon. Yes, Mr. George Chiesa.
I'm a Rotarian and I'm also a Toastmaster. I'm not a member of this club in particular. I was a member here, but in Toastmasters, you could be a member of multiple clubs. In Rotary, you can only be a member of one, and I'm already a member of one. So how can one help or participate, other than as a visitor, in initiatives in e-clubs that are cause-based? Would it make sense to allow either dual membership, or would you treat them as what? Honorary guests? It doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't know how we can help. Yes.
Can I answer that? That's okay. Steve comes along to my club quite often. I go to his club occasionally. It's fine. Now you've got Steve's contact details through Jenny. You can find out when they meet, and just join as a guest, a visiting Rotarian. They will welcome the chance to talk to new people and build their network. That's what Rotary is about.
Oh, I understand. I'm Asperger myself, and I have an interest in everything that is mental health related and neurodiversity related. And I'm also in the DEI group in my district, 4895 here in Argentina. The point is, in the case of this Toastmaster Club, I was involved because I don't want just to be a visit every so while. Now some things change, I'm not as available, but my point is, can we just be a visitor and more a frequent visitor, let's call it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, George.
There's 2 terms you've heard, one being a Rotary Action Group, the other being a cause-based club. And then George just introduced this idea of, a traditional land-based geography club. You're only allowed membership in one land club, but folks from any club, and in fact, folks who are not part of Rotary are welcome to be members of these action groups. Those cover all districts, all clubs globally.
So an e-club is an action group?
No.
No,
three
distinct things. 3 distinct things.
Yeah.
Rotary Club, e-based club,
Okay.
Rotary Action Group.
Jenny?
I was going to ask more about the differences between your mental health and wellness action group, the mental health e-club, and then you have the Rotary Bipolar e-club, how that works, in part because I also heard from our fellow residential Rotarian, George, that there's a way for Rotarians to perhaps help Toastmasters clubs as a service project, and vice versa. It's our 100th year anniversary for the founding of Toastmasters International, where Dr. Smedley, the founder of Toastmasters International, is also a fellow Rotarian. And so his vision was while most of us may have come to Toastmasters to learn to make better speeches, that is but the beginning of the good that which may come and the good which we may do for mankind, which also has an implication of, as better communicators, we hopefully can lead and influence and motivate others to do good and have an impact on society. So how do you get three leaders, since you're leaders of three different types of organizations within Rotary at different parts of the world in Great Britain and America, how can we foster more collaboration between Toastmasters and Rotary for these cause-based initiatives?
So I put a link into the universal chat, and it basically allows you to look up by town or, postal code, where are the Rotary clubs nearest me? And all of them over the years have heard that there's an affiliation with Toastmasters. Few clubs remind people often, but I'm here today because someone simply reached out and said, we've got a thing going on with Toastmasters. Would you like to visit this meeting? And I was thrilled for the invitation. Thank you. And I will mention it to other Rotary members. We do have an active partnership. You do make us better Rotary members as well as better community volunteers through your skill building. So we're grateful. In addition to that link that I put up, which is general Rotary clubs, these action groups are probably 24. There's things called fellowships of people from around the world who like salsa dancing or whiskey drinking or drafts playing can meet and do what is their passion wherever they are in the world. There's dozen, or I guess there's 24 action groups, things like malaria eradication, slavery eradication. So action groups are more service oriented. Mental health initiatives is one of many. But that link tells you who's nearby, and that's the local contact. That's the grassroots beginning.
And I think if I could add to that, Bob, coming back to the original question, the Rotary Action Group on Mental Health is very much an umbrella. It covers all the mental health conditions, whereas bipolar is specific to those who are either living with or are interested in or supporting people with bipolar. So it's one segment of the entire circle or the entire universe of mental health, which is what Bob's involved with.
Daniel, please.
What was the specific strategies that you learned to be able to answer those Q&A questions in the future when you face unruly crowd or those type of situations?
Well, that's
your tips.
Well, Daniel, it's a really interesting question because I've traveled the world doing negotiation training seminars, and because I'm over a number of years got very good at it and became quite expert. I was and often people of the audience, especially on the morning of day one, would test me out, and because I'd done it so many times, I knew how to have fun with that. And that the fact they wanted to have fun, they were testing me, turned into a training experience. I had the expertise, I had the knowledge. So that was that situation. In this situation, I knew I didn't have the knowledge, I didn't have the skills. I didn't know how I could manage my internal state. Actually, is it even possible to change somebody's mind if they've been thinking like that for 30, 40 years about mental health? Is that my job? I've got to think about the rest of the audience who are in there and who knows what that impact has had on them. I'm representing my Rotary Club and I'm representing the bipolar community. I had none of the skills in that moment to know what to do. So, but I did know, an obvious response would be to maybe come out with statistics and to challenge that individual and then have a debate. And would that have proved anything? Would that have gone well? Did I know enough about it? And therefore I chose, rightly or wrongly, to do nothing. As it turned out, because I did nothing, it meant that when I retold the story to my compatriots in Bipolar UK and in Rotary Great Britain and Ireland, I had a clean slate. If, for example, I got into a debate or an argument, all of a sudden it all becomes a little bit, it's not quite so clear. So it meant I had a clear slate. And actually, the bigger prize wasn't about changing one person or 2 or 3 people in the audience. The big prize is developing material, which means everyone in our club, everyone in the bipolar community, everyone else we now meet in Rotary who communicates on our behalf has got more content and better knowledge. Sorry, that's quite a long-winded answer, but I hope it makes sense.
What I hear you is that to focus on the big picture and try to argue, because sometimes argues they're not productive. Most of the time they're not productive.
And it depends on the situation. And so I used to train situational negotiation. This is why it's so lovely. It's a bit like a mental health diagnosis. Everything's different. Everyone's different. It's situational. So in that specific situation, it wasn't appropriate for me to engage.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, George, I did read the comments. I quite like George's comments. He said, smile, redirect, and move on. I think I did do the redirect, but I'm not sure I managed the smile bit. So that's something for me to work on.
Right. Thank you for that. Amar, did you have a question?
So this club started, I think, 2 years ago. I'm a charter member of it as well. And how do, the neurodiversity kind of space was, I think, we were one of the first to do it in Toastmasters. And so you can almost think 98 years, no one thought of a cause base around neurodiversity. And now we hopefully will see more of these type of clubs. How do you change a culture or kind of advocate to such a big organization? Do you start at the club level, or do you kind of figure out, because I'm trying to figure out how do you take this kind of club that might be trying to be one district in a small part of the world and people will come and visit, but how do you kind of spread the message so that other clubs kind of come to the point and take what we're doing here and take it to their district? Thank you.
Who is that aimed at, please?
I'll take Roger.
Thank you. I shouldn't have opened my mouth. I think you've got to have an apostle. You've got to have someone who A, has the commitment and B, has the presence. We're lucky. We've got Tom Gump. And when you hear him speak, I don't know if you have, Bob, but I've heard him a couple of times now, and he can fill the room, and he has a way of getting his message across that you think, yeah, why don't we do that? And it's about having a bit like Steve was doing, going out and selling the message with a consistent message, not necessarily a replica message. Doesn't have to be word for word, but it does have to be consistent in its emphasis. And it has to be, the main thing is that whoever is dealing with that, is delivering it, has to have the enthusiasm, has to have the ability to control the room. Because if they just speak from the script, it doesn't matter how good their idea is, it will fall over. It's got to be emotionally impactful.
Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to figure. Like, as neurodivergent, individuals, maybe we're 20, 30% of the population, but we're underrepresented in something like Toastmasters. So it's trying to figure out how do you, as speakers, get to the point where you can actually influence to get more representation on the bigger scale. But it's like starting with small is kind of where we start, and trying to figure out how to get, as you said, an apostle or a sponsor to take this to the next level. But thank you for your response.
I'd like to build on that, Amar. Are you part of a Rotary district already?
No, I have very little experience with Rotary. So I'm actually I think I've met one Rotarian in my entire life, so not I can say I have a lot of exposure to the club or the organization.
Maybe you and
You've met
Steve
four
off,
more tonight.
Thank you.
maybe you and Steve offline can talk about how to get affiliated with one particular club or another, or excuse me, district or another. I think at the district level, you'll find a louder voice than at the club level.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Thank you. And I'll definitely do that. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Rob, Bob, and Roger.
Get yourself invited as a speaker to some of their conferences.
That's a big one we're trying to get to. That's a great one a suggestion that we're actually working on. Thank you.
Jenny?
To build upon this collaboration synergy, I put in the chat that this event was in part inspired because there were two Rotarians who are also Toastmasters who initiated an event with two world champs of public speaking from Toastmasters to learn about storytelling. And each one of you has an amazing, passionate origin story that could be told even more emotional, memorable, you name it, ways to resonate your message more. How can you three leaders and perhaps the leaders of our club foster a way to collaborate such that it reaches the leaders at the top where there's more synergies, more collaborative events like that? Because that's only one event that I've seen since the Alliance that's been for a while now. And there's no more events planned according to World Headquarters this year. How can we foster more collaborations between, whether it's with the Rotary Bipolar E Club, whether it's with District 1145, whether it's with the Mental Health and Wellness Action Group, so that we can have more of these events where these synergies benefit the dual members to level up your message while having an impact on the community and vice versa. Because right now it seems like one organization visits the other and vice versa, but it's not actually a joint initiative. So how do we figure out, how do we do these joint initiatives? Like, for example, how do we brand a joint event? How do we plan a joint event? How do we measure the success of that joint collaboration, whether it's the service project or initiatives like our club is doing, ranging from speaker bureaus for training on neurodiversity to applying for grants where we are trying to raise the employment stats of neurodivergent professionals, which is really low. It's 85% are unemployed or underemployed for autistic adults in America, in Europe, Canada, you name it. And they even have graduate degrees or college degrees at the minimum. How can we do more of these initiatives together?
On a national level, there are 37, is it, I think, districts, help me, Bob, 37 zones.
Yep.
30, is it 37 zones?
It's at least 34.
Something like that, across the world. And each of those zones has what's called an institute or an annual conference. Now, I happen to be the chair of our zones, one for Great Britain and Ireland, Portugal, Gibraltar, and other countries. And we are looking, 2 years ago, our then Rotary International president, Jennifer Jones, she was a specialist in storytelling. She could tell the most amazing stories that would really fire you up. And it's died a death a bit. And but we are still looking for people to give us processes by which senior leaders can develop their storytelling abilities. And speakers at the institutes, the zone institutes, and there's I don't know, about 30 or 40 of them across the world. Those would go down well. It's a good opportunity to get to senior people, because most of it is things like district governors and senior people within Rotary that you would be able to get to. So in the first instance, I know it's not fully answering the question asked, but the first instance I'd say would be to offer your services as speakers at the major conferences, the zone conferences. Technically, they're called an institute or an action summit. That's the first thing I would suggest.
And one of the things I brought up that is of particular interest to our club is very similar to what you said about the people that we've got a incredibly smart people, but if they've been through an episode, getting back into work and getting their confidence back isn't always easy. We also have I think the stat around 8% of the bipolar community in the UK are higher rate taxpayers, so some people are functioning and doing really well. And we're also in the process of applying for a global grant around education and training, and I can see, but I don't know, because look, I'm the brand new person here. I've only been in Rotary less than a year, but the Toastmasters presentation modules, how can they be tailored, or do they need to be tailored? I don't know, to a community which is lacking in confidence and self-esteem, to give them, and I guess in many ways, this is why neurodiverse leadership is here. How can we use those to say, look, you're not in work, blah, blah, blah. You might not even be able to afford to be a Rotarian. I don't know if they might not be able to afford to be a Toastmaster because they've got no money. They're living on benefits or whatever, however it is. But how can we give you some skills and tools and support to get you back to leading a more purposeful life and, hopefully employed? And that's ongoing for us. So that could be one of our projects in the next 12 months.
So two quick things. One, we have forums. I say we, this is the Global Mental Health Initiatives Rotary Action Group. We have forums, and we are seeking content for those forums, primarily seeking champions to maintain the quality of the forum. And we would love a neurodiverse leadership forum, or however you choose to phrase it. And it's a vehicle that's got global readership that would build on its own merits over time. The second thing is that we have probably 40 clubs per district, probably 40 districts per zone. And then you heard earlier that we've got 34 zones globally. So there's 200 countries. The number is either 4,000 clubs or 40,000 clubs. I'm failing on the math here. But they all have some individuals that have some families who are interested very much in what you're doing, both on the neurodiverse topic and on the Toastmaster side of things. So honestly, I would love you to consider investing $35, being a non-Rotary member of the action group, and leveraging some of the web pages in there, because we are actively seeking content. So I need your help.
Thank you, everyone.